Good morning. It is 6:22 a.m. on Monday, June 13th, 2022. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. Once again, I am leaning over a little bit so that I don't have to move my microphone stand and disturb my little dog who has his head resting on the base of that stand. He's a very good boy. This is technically my second take of doing this video because I watched a movie yesterday called RRR, which stands for Rise, Roar, Revolt. Although my understanding is that the actual title of the movie is RRR, not the words, but that's a little confusing. And so technically speaking, the reason that this is the second take is because I got overly distracted because I didn't remember what those three words were in the first take, and I got too distracted trying to figure out what they were, and it wasn't happening quickly, and I decided to just cut and start over. So now you know that. RRR is really good, everybody. If you have not heard of it, it is an action movie from India. And although many people, may have heard of Bollywood, which is the, at least. So let me first confess that there was a little bit of a learning experience for me yesterday, because I thought of Bollywood as representing all Indian cinema, but I was mistaken, because there is apparently, in some regards, a separate film industry coming out of southern India that is known as Tollywood, and I believe that's because it is primarily featuring the Telugu language, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing any of that, but RRR comes from Tollywood rather than Bollywood. So, but in the for those like me who have maybe some but not a lot of experience with Indian cinema, it has in a lot of the things that you might associate with those, meaning there are big song and dance numbers, and let's see what else. I don't know. I guess just elaborate costuming, and I guess I'm trying to think what other thing. So I am telling this terribly. RRR is a movie that came to my attention because just a lot of people were talking about how great it is. It was apparently the most expensive film coming out of Tollywood to date, and a lot of people were talking about it. It was getting a lot of attention in the United States, and I had heard a lot of people that I respect talking about it, and then sure enough, it's going to be the next movie for the Unspooled podcast, which I enjoy. And so I said, you know what, it's finally time to watch it. I realized to my dismay that it was no longer in theaters here. I had the opportunity to go see it in theaters, and then I let that slip by. I wish that I hadn't. I watched it on Netflix, which again is a whole other thing related to what I was just talking about, because apparently the version that is on Netflix is dubbed into Hindi rather than in its original language, and so there's something complicated going on there that I'll confess that I don't have full visibility on. But in any case, again, I'm telling this terribly. I am 4 minutes into this video. How about I tell you what the movie's about and what I like about it? Maybe those are the things that are probably more important. I've given you some important context, I suppose, to knowing what this movie is. But here's what it's about. There are in India's history two significant revolutionary figures who fought against the British, colonialists in the 1920s, and I guess the filmmaker here noticed that in their earlier, like the two of them had some coincidences that made him think, what if before the time that they became famous revolutionaries, they had met each other and been friends? And let's make a fantastical action movie about that idea, that you have these two real historical figures that were famous revolutionaries, but then also layer on some uh, Indian mythological figures, and then make that into a big, boisterous, sincere, fun action movie. And that's what they did, and it's great. I feel like it's just exceptionally good filmmaking on display. The actors are great. The performances are great. The action, the it's just this really intense, achingly sincere story. It's kind of melodramatic in some of the plot machinations, but in a way that really just works. Everything's heightened, and so we begin establishing that there's this inciting event where the British kidnap this little girl from this village and take her back to their headquarters, their fort. And so this sets up the collision of these two guys. One who is someone from that girl's same tribe, who is sworn to try to get her back if he can, and then another who is the working for the police, under the British, who has been tasked with finding the first guy. But there's more to that guy that we don't necessarily know right away. We establish pretty early on that this guy is a total badass, but also a total badass with some apparent contradictions in his behavior that we don't fully understand until it's revealed later in the movie. But the two of them, despite being set on this collision course, end up becoming friends when neither of them know who the other is yet. And then, of course, we have not only this collision in terms of their tasks, but also now they're friends, and they're set up in opposition against their friend, and it's pointless trying to explain more of the story other than to just tell you that the action in this movie is incredible. There's there's a fight scene in a mob that has I think probably the largest total number of people involved in a fight scene that I've ever seen. And that's pretty amazing. There's fights with CGI tigers and motorcycles and horses and exploding trains. And so what I would say right now is that if you have the opportunity to see this movie in the theater, you should. And ideally, if you get the choice, you should see it in the original Telugu language instead of the Hindi dub, if you can. But failing that, if you, like me, allowed the opportunity to see it in the theater pass you by, it is currently on Netflix with the Hindi dub, and I was really glad I watched it. It's long, as many Indian films, epics are, but it's not boring or slow in the least. Those 3.5 hours flew by. Now, maybe you have to watch it in chunks if it's hard to get that much time in one block, but watch the movie. It's I feel like this was an exceptionally poorly organized, at least, way to try to review this movie or explain what it is to people who might be entirely unfamiliar, but what are you going to do? I do these things first thing in the morning. Give me a break. And then go watch RRR. All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.